Hey everyone, and welcome to this next video. I'm going to be talking about orthographic and isometric views. This is going to be a brief overview just to get you familiarized with the two different ways of viewing objects on a blueprint. This is the object that I'm going to be using to demonstrate the various views, and as you can see, it's just 3 pieces of carbon steel that have been cut out in different shapes, and they have been welded together. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first blueprint image. And so looking at the blueprint, you can see that there's a lot of different images on there. This is just a sample that I made at home. If you're in one of my classes, this should look pretty familiar to you. But every view that's on here gives you a different set of information that relates to the project that I put together. And we're going to take a look at what each individual view is telling us about the object. So before I move on to the next image, right there, smack in the middle, the image that's given, that's what I'm going to talk about first. Now, if we take that metal object that I put together and we look at it from the front, this is what we would see. Now, the camera was pretty up close, so you can see a little bit of the sides of the 2 vertical pieces, but let's try to ignore that for now. And just imagine if we were to draw an imaginary line around the outside edges of all 3 pieces, and then we also include that corner where the vertical pieces kind of have a slant to them. If we were to draw those boundaries out, this is what we would see. And this is essentially what creates a front view on a blueprint. So this is a 2-dimensional representation of the project. And you'll notice that if we switch back to the blueprint and we zoom in on that front view that's given to us, we can see that this looks just the same. So I've taken the hidden lines out. So in this image, we're only looking at the object lines. That is, the lines that create the foundation of the object that we're looking at, or basically the edges. So the object lines give us just enough to get an idea of the general shape of the project. Okay, so back to the general blueprint image. So what we just went over was that image right in the middle, or what is called the front view. Now we're going to deal with the view that's directly to its right, which is called the right view, or the right side view. And so it's called the right side view because if you were to take the image, or basically if you were to take the object that you're working on and you just rotate it so that way you're looking at the right side of the object, this is what you would see. So the right side is telling us that if you were to look at the right side of the object, this is the information that you would see. And so if we take the image that we just saw outlined in red and we compare it to the image that's given to us on the blueprint, that is the right side view, you'll notice that it's the exact same shape, the exact same layout. Now that we've covered the front and the right view, let's go ahead and take a look at the left side view. So if we go back to the original blueprint image, this is going to be the image directly to the left of the front view. And so just like you would with the right side view, rotating the project until you're looking at it from the right side, we would do the same thing for looking at the left side. We would rotate the project in the opposite direction in order to view it straight on from the left side. And remembering that this is a 2-dimensional drawing, let's go ahead and outline the shape in red. And so if we take a look at this image and then go to a zoomed in depiction of the left view on the blueprint, you'll notice that once again, they're exactly the same. And now let's go ahead and hop back to the blueprint view. So the next view that I'm going to cover is what's called the top view. So if we refocus at the center of the blueprint and we look at the front view, The top view is going to be located directly above the front view. And here, while we're looking at the top side of the project, I do admit that I have this rotated incorrectly, so that way the back side is sitting on the bottom, whereas the front should be sitting on the bottom. So I apologize for that, but I do want to note that nonetheless, we are looking at the top side. So again here, imagine that we're turning this into a two-dimensional image. We're going to go ahead and outline everything in red, so that way you get the idea. And we can see that this looks just like the image on the blueprint if we look at the top view. And just the opposite of the top view, if we wanted to look at the bottom view of the project, let's go ahead and reorient ourselves on the front view, which is located at the center of this print image. So the bottom view is going to be located directly underneath the front view. And so here I've rotated the project so that way we're looking at the bottom side, or basically the bottom view. And so just the same as every other view, we're going to outline what we see in red. And in this case, once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and include hidden lines so that way we know that there are pieces that are a part of this project, but we just can't see them from this side. And once again, you'll notice that the image looks very similar, if not exact, to the bottom view that was given on the blueprint. Now, one view that I'm going to include here that I wasn't able to include on the blueprint because there just wasn't sufficient room, this is the back view. So just like with the left, right, top, and bottom view of the project, we're looking at this image as if we rotated the project complete 180, so that way we're looking at it from the backside. And again here, I have to apologize for the camera being so up close to where you can see a little more than just a two-dimensional representation here. But, as always, I'm going to draw the red lines so that way we can focus on what it should look like on a blueprint when given an orthographic view. So just a quick recap on what we just talked about. We just discussed orthographic views, or another way to say orthographic views is simply to say two-dimensional views. So this is when we take a certain object that we're working on or working with, and we create a view for welders and fabricators to see all the details of what the object is while looking at it from different sides or different views. So typically, you'll see a front view, a top view, and a side view, whether that's left or right. Now, if the left and right side look exactly the same, that is, they're symmetrical, then you only need to include one side. Now, depending on the size and the detail of the project, you might have to include more views. This is where you can include a back side, a bottom side. There's really no special number of views that you have to give, but it's kind of a rule of thumb to have at least 3 or maybe at least 2, depending on how simple the project is. Always give a front view and try to give a top view and one of the sides. So that way the welder or fabricator has a good idea of the sizes of the material that need to be handled, and then also they'll be able to tell where the welds need to go or any other type of preparation or work that needs to be done. And now let's talk about isometric views. So another way to say isometric views is to simply say a three-dimensional view. So this is where we can actually get a better idea of what the object is supposed to look like, a little bit more than what an orthographic view would give us. So whereas an orthographic view is two-dimensional and we often need multiple views to get a better concept of what the object looks like, an isometric view or three-dimensional view puts it all together and gives us a better picture of just what the object is. And so here is one version of an isometric view of the project that we've been talking about so far. And so here we can see that everything is just made up of object lines. We know that there's some stuff that we can't see from this view, and I've selected not to include hidden lines just to show you that there is another type of isometric view. So here's one, again, just object lines, no hidden lines. And here we have another isometric view. Basically, same thing. It's a three-dimensional representation of the object. But in this case, I've included hidden lines so that way you can see all the missing information that the other isometric view lacked because the hidden lines were removed. And so just a quick recap of that. Isometric views are also called three-dimensional views. Not every blueprint is going to include these. However, they do give the welder fabricator the best possible representation of what the object is going to look like once completed. Now, you can't really throw a bunch of dimensions on here and welding symbols without making it look too confusing or too crowded, and that's why a lot of times engineers will include both types of views on a blueprint, both orthographic and isometric.